Hello all, this is part 2 in the lecture on ancient Greece. I misgauged it a little bit. This is going to be a pretty short section, so bear with me here. Okay, before we talked about hairstyle, let's look at some accessories. Footwear, leather, mostly open sandals. Women, barefoot or one or two strap sandals there. You can see at the top a woman's wear. Men wore sandals, but if they're traveling, you get this nice, high, soft leather boot with lacings up the front. Don't have a name for it. They're just nice boots. Jewelry. They loved them some gold pieces, those Greeks. They weren't really ostentatious or big, really too big into the Egyptian precious stones there, but they loved gold, and they were very good goldsmithing. There are 3 techniques in goldsmithing that were prevalent in ancient Greece. The first is repoussé, which is taking gold. You can see here, these little fellas here. Oh, and hammering thin gold over a lead, wooden, or resin mold. You can see these little tigers or maybe lions or something. And they would take that. We have a tiny little mold, and they would take that thin gold and hammer it very delicately to get that shape. So that's repoussé. Granulation, where you take these little granules of gold. They take gold, melt it, and they would drop it into cold water and would form these little balls. So you get this sort of intricate pattern made from little balls of gold. And the third is filigree, where they would take wire, gold wire. They would draw the wire through this funnel to make this thin gold wire, and then they would carefully arrange it in these delicate designs. So repoussé, granulation, filigree. Just an aside, armilia, an armband, gold twisted into a snake-like bracelet, a version called the paraskelis on the feet there. I know those are odd-looking feet. I can't figure out that drawing myself. Makeup. Okay, so makeup was pretty prevalent. We don't see a lot of weird makeup in representations of Greece in the modern world, but they did use a lead-based white pigment called synthion. And then they would take that and put over this rouge made of root juices called phycos. And then the synthion is, like I said, lead-based. The lead would be wrapped up in cheesecloth and buried, and it would become flaky, and they would mix it with this paste with animal fat usually, and that would become the face makeup. Also mixed with animal fat is red ochre for a very bright lipstick. And then, since we got some animal fat laying around, why don't we mix in some charcoal, and we'll make some eyeshadow and eyeliner called absolos. Because why not? Now, just an extra word, and we'll see more pictures of this with the Romans. To us, some of that makeup would look very jarring and almost clown-like, but at the time, it was pretty standard. Quickly, specialty costumes, religious. There really wasn't any, except chitons tended to be ankle length instead of knee length, and bright white, bleached. So that was it, pretty much, but otherwise there's nothing specific. Military, we start to see some more sophistication. This will be a theme continued throughout the history of clothing. A soldier was known as a hoplite. He wore a knee-length chiton. He had a collection of armor known as the panoply, which was the helmet, shield, body armor, and leg armor. It weighed about 70 pounds. The shield, the main part is the shield, a curved ball of carved wood called the hoplon, hence the name hoplite. So basically, you can see up here in the upper right, they had this scalloped out at the edges. The idea was you would hide behind the shield, and you could poke your sword out at your enemy. However, that didn't stop the enemy from poking his sword in at you, so they got rid of the scallops. So by the classical era, you just see this complete round wooden, skinned with bronze, usually painted with the symbol of the army of the city-state represented by the hoplite. I think this is Sparta, this one in the lower right here. Helmet made of hammered bronze. The favorite helmet was this one, called the Corinthian helmet. One piece of bronze with cheek and nose guards. Now, by the classical era, the nose guard disappears. You can see this little tongue of bronze, hammered bronze hanging out. So it's fairly sturdy, but it could bend. So one hit with the hilt of a sword or a fist or something, and it's going to bend in and break your nose. So they figured, let's just get rid of that. So we see that, and we see the cheek guards right here, right? These cheek guards are a little simplified, and they can hinge up and out of the way. So you don't have those rubbing against you all day long if you're not in combat. And then for foot soldiers, a simple plume of dyed horsehair, black or red. Officers, of course, had elaborate horsehair crests, so you could see them across the battlefield, which is usually also dyed black or red. This is the cuirass. This is the fitted leather tunic, usually with bronze plates sewn in for protection. These are the tergies, these little panels here, usually reinforced leather or wool. And then a leather belt or leather baldric was worn over the cuirass. Here you see at the bottom what the whole set looks like. You can see, if you can see that, little strings, right here. There's some up here. So it's all really one piece. And you do usually have someone helping you get into it and tie in. Here we see a modern recreation. He's got a white tunic on, a white chiton. He's got his cuirass attached to his tergies, and he's got his Corinthian helmet. He's an officer because he has a white, interesting choice there, but a white horsehair crest. He's more classic because he's still got the nose guard, and it doesn't look like his cheek guards are hinged. So that's an older Homeric. This is one favored by the Spartans. It's called a muscle cuirass. So it was molded on a human form, consisted of two parts that hung together. It was made of bronze. It was consisted of two parts hinged together on one side and laced up. And the idea is to make the wearer look more ferocious. So quickly, greaves. These are greaves. These are bronze leggings. So that help with some leg protection. So you get hamstring. And then, of course, you have either a spear or you have this leaf blade shaped blade. If you're going to be a soldier, you have to pay for it yourself. They're just not going to give you. It's not like a modern national army. You're a paid army that is conditional for when you need it, and then you go back to doing what you want. So you're going to pay for your own gear, whether you're a lowly foot soldier or an officer. You will pay to be in the army. Theatrical, real quick. Tragic actors wore a long chiton, usually highly embroidered. And then three main characters were individual garments. I wrote that. I don't know what the hell I meant. I think they were chitons of different colors. And then, of course, the chorus would wear those as well. Bands of color denoting a character's emotional state usually had an identifying prop. The protagonist might usually also wore hymation, because most protagonists in Greek theater, particularly tragedy, were noble or royal characters, like Oedipus, or like Jason in Medea, or Creon in Antigone. And the two lesser ones, someone who played a lesser character, like, let's say we are saying Oedipus, like the messenger, or the blind Tiresias, the blind seer, might wear chlamys. Also, they would wear this soft leather shoe with a high wooden clog called a kothornos. Now, let me point out in this is actually an action figure. Archaeologists unearthed this little theater. It was a little playset theater that had actors and chorus people and little slots in the stage, and then these little pegs here would fit in the slots. So this isn't part of the kothornos. That's just part of the action figure playset. I want one of those. Anyway, this was a high soft leather shoe. You can't really see it under the chiton, but basically it's a sandal with a clog on it. And the idea is when they came out, when the actors would come out and say their lines, remember, they're saying them in this sort of recitative. It's more of an opera than a play that we would think of today. And they were keeping time with the thump, 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 thump of the clogs of their shoe. So that's why the kothornos was important. Comic actors wore chitons that were too short and too tight. Under this, they had stuffed leather bellies and buttocks and a long leather phallus. They were also some of the first to wear trouser types, hoses. Trousers are here. We don't talk much about trousers because that was the Asians who brought them in, the horsemen, the barbarians, because trousers are better than chitons for riding horses and for cold weather. So they sort of adapted those so they have something attached to their butts and bellies and phalluses too. And there you go. So that's what happens if you're a comic actor. Suffer for your craft. And of course the masks, made of wood, cork, or molded leather. Openings for eyes and mouth and plumes of styled hair. Of course, we all know the different expressions for comedy and tragedy. The interesting thing about masks is there are no extant masks from the period. Because they were made of such lightweight material, they obviously disintegrated pretty easy over the millennia, the centuries. So all we have are representations like we see at this, I think this is Pompeii, a mosaic in Pompeii. So we know what we look like, but we don't have any hands-on theater masks. So if you ever find one extant, you can write your own ticket in academia world. Okay, let's look at some examples. Of course, Oedipus and Antigone. Here we see Antigone. This is just after Oedipus blinded himself. The plague is still going on. Oedipus in Hymation. Antigone in Doric Peplos. They're representing the classical age, so she's got the older garment on there. All sorts of statues, Zeus, Hera, all their finery. Odysseus is always, usually Odysseus and Perseus are normal heroes. They're not kings or royalty. Well, Odysseus kind of is, but he's a working class Joe. He's kind of like Joe Biden, you know. He's like, hey, let's go get a beer. So they're usually put in exomuses, exomi and exomus, as you can see here with Perseus. So Medea, of course, depicted in a chiton. Usually, this is over here on the right is a romantic era 19th century painting. So she's got this big hymation, right, the diplax, and she's sleeved, which is a little odd, but you know that's more of a artistic license. And of course, Achilles is usually dressed as a hoplite. No things there. And of course, King Leonidas of Sparta. In the statue of him, you can see he has the muscle cuirass on. They just, in the movie 300, they just took that out and made these guys do a lot of Pilates and stuff. So it's kind of a natural, and there's some airbrush work, let's be honest. Come on, there's airbrush. These guys are in late 30s, 40s, so there's a little airbrush work going on there too. Good helmets, but you can see that's a Spartan. Okay, other movies, Clash of the Titans, obviously Greek inspired. Different interpretations through the years. Jason and the Argonauts. Hercules in 1958. Hercules, Steve Reeves. I think that's not Steve Reeves, that's some other guy. But almost always not in a full chiton, or he's in an exomus, or just kind of this loincloth, and of course well oiled. And then just some interesting asides in fashion shows. Victor and Rolf in 2009 did a Peplos chiton inspired, Greek-inspired fashion show. You can see they kind of emulated the Greek draping techniques, even on the handbag. And of course, you might never have noticed before, but Papa Smurf, what's he wearing? A Phrygian cap. What else? So, okay, well, there it is. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in the Roman era.